Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Stracciatella soup. That's right, this soup is dedicated to anyone who's ever had one of those days, which is everyone. Yep, you get home after a long day and you're stressed, and you're angry, and you're frustrated, and just generally upset with the universe and everything in it. And above and beyond that, you get home and you realize you're also tired and starving. Plus, did we mention there's nothing in the house to eat? Well, my friends, good news, because that's exactly why this soup was invented. This stuff is proven to cure woodalgia, and several things that don't. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're going to want to do is bring some stock or broth up to a simmer over high heat. And today I'm going to be using a nice rich chicken broth, which may or may not be homemade. But please know that this is going to work pretty much exactly the same with any kind of meat or vegetable stock. And then besides bringing this up to a simmer, the only other thing we're going to want to do is make sure this is seasoned properly. So make sure you give it a taste and add some salt if you have to, which I did. I also added a pinch of freshly ground black pepper. Okay, so make sure you check that out and adjust if you have to. And then what we can do while we're waiting for that to come up to the simmer is put together our egg mixture, which, not surprisingly, is going to start with 3 large whole eggs. And by the way, if you're into rules of thumb, we basically want 1 egg for every 2 cups of stock. And then to the eggs, we're going to add some freshly chopped Italian parsley, if you have it, which you do, since you have a plant in a pot on a windowsill, or should. And then to that, we're going to add a couple tablespoons of semolina flour, which, by the way, is optional, but I do prefer it if you have it. And then we'll go ahead and toss in some finely grated cheese, which is not optional. And I'm going to use 2 kinds, some Parmigiano Reggiano and some Pecorino Romano. And of course, you can just use one or the other. And then let's go ahead and season this up a little bit with a nice big pinch of salt, as well as a good old shake of cayenne. Come on, you're not going to try to forget about your horrible day without cayenne, are you? And then we'll also do a little bit of freshly ground black pepper. And then last but not least, we'll do a little pinch of nutmeg. And yes, of course, freshly grated. I'm insulted by your question. That's really the only kind anyone should use. So we'll grate in a little touch of nutmeg, and then we'll simply take a whisk and mix this very thoroughly. And theoretically, in the few minutes it took you to put this together, our broth or stock will have come up to a simmer, and we are ready to stracciatella. And to accomplish that, all we're going to have to do is slowly pour this in, while stirring with a spoon. And as you can see, I'm using the freakishly small wooden spoon. And what's going to happen as we stir that mixture into this hot simmering liquid, it's going to form what appears to be thousands upon thousands of tiny little torn rags. Which, by the way, is what stracciatella means. And as soon as that's stirred in, believe it or not, that's it. All we're going to do is leave the heat on until this comes back up to temperature and starts to simmer again. And you'll notice when you first stir this in, it's going to look kind of cloudy and weird. But don't worry. Just keep stirring, leave it on the heat, and it will go from looking cloudy and weird to looking clear, but still weird. But that's fine, that's what it's supposed to look like. And of course, like everything we serve, we're going to taste it one more time before we dish it up. And once we're happy with the seasoning, we will grab a ladle and go ahead and serve this up into some hot bowls. And personally, I think all those millions of little tiny rags are so interesting looking, you don't really need a garnish here. But I did notice a little parsley on the cutting board, so I tossed it in. I didn't want to waste it. As well as a little bit of chili flake. And then last but not least, a couple optional drips of olive oil, since you really should include a little bit of fat with every meal. And that is it. Our stracciatella soup is done. You pair that with a nice simple green salad and maybe some crusty bread, and you're talking about an incredibly fast, incredibly simple, and yet profoundly satisfying and comforting meal. It really does make everything seem like it's okay. And suddenly that idiot at work does not seem like that big of a problem. And you probably already thought, wow, this would be an easy soup to adapt and add lots of different things to. Yes, absolutely. A lot of people like to throw a handful of spinach in here or Swiss chard, as well as adding some additional meat, whether it's chicken or sausage. You are, after all, the David Lee Roth of this raggedy broth. So please feel free to adapt this and accessorize as you see fit. So even though you weren't in a good mood after work, and you didn't have any time or energy or ingredients for that matter, you still probably will be able to pull off something like this. And if you can, everything's going to seem a lot better. And that's because it is a lot better, okay? So anyway, I really hope you were paying attention and heard what I was stracciatelling you, because this really is a soup everybody should have in their repertoire, especially after one of those days. So I really do hope you give this a try soon. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.